Hi, and welcome to Always Bring a Book. My name's Craig, and on today's episode, I sit down with the former New York Times reporter and best-selling author Michael Finkel. He's the author of Stranger in the Woods, the true crime memoir, True Story, and most recently, The Art Thief. In this conversation, we talk about the strange twist of his career, the unbelievable real stories he's uncovered, and what it's like to spend years chasing the truth behind some of the most fascinating people in the world. I have been a huge fan of Michael's work for a while now, and The Art Thief was one of my favorite nonfiction books of the last few years. So enjoy the podcast and stick around at the end for some book recommendations and to hear about our next episode. Today's guest is Michael Finkel, who has written for National Geographic, GQ, Rolling Stone, The Atlantic, and many more. He is also the author of True Story, The Stranger in the Woods, and The Art Thief. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Call me Mike unless you're mad at me or something like that. But yeah.
How
please.
dare you, Michael? Yes. All right, Mike from here on out.
Exactly. Did you hear my mother or something in the background? That's exactly the way my youth was. Michael.
You're lucky I didn't use your middle name.
Exactly. Michael Jeffrey.
Yes, exactly. So your last few books have been about people living on the fringes of society, to say the very least. Accused murderers, a thief who stole billions of dollars worth of art, and a man who lived alone in the woods for over 20 years. Researching and writing an in-depth nonfiction book takes so much time and effort. So what is it about these types of stories that draws you in and makes you want to spend so much time with them?
I think it's sort of funny the way you say that, because I've tried my hand at fiction and it seems harder. Some people I think are wired better for the truth. I've always been a reporter. I'm 57 years old now, but I started my freshman year of high school on the high school paper. And I really feel like I've had the same job since I was a freshman in high school. I probably was 15 years old. The old cliche, truth stranger than fiction, but it just works better for me. So if you like reading and you like researching, then I don't find it onerous. I find it almost, in fact, if anything, my wife has to be like, Mike, you might want to quit researching and get writing. I could research until the end of time. I never feel like I know everything there is to know about hermits or art thieves or this crazy space between one's ears. And so I always find it, I'm not going to say that writing is a pleasurable. I dislike it in the movies when there's always like some song playing and they're just tapping away as if it's like a piano keyboard. No, it's more like, bashing my head against the computer keyboard. But it is the true pieces of nonfiction, pieces of reportage always, I don't know, for lack of a better word, suit my aesthetic soul.
Why these types of characters, though? I mean, because you could write about, like Mother Teresa or something. Like, why is it like someone who's been accused of this or someone who's like totally off the grid? Like, why not like someone more like the kind of prim and proper type of character?
Feel for me as you will, but I kind of like criminals. I know that sounds sort of odd. Obviously, a big marketplace. And in my history as a journalist, I have also gotten myself into a little bit of hot water many years ago, around the year 2000. So more than a quarter century ago, when I was a young reporter, I was fired from the New York Times for combining several quotes together to make what's called a composite character, which sometimes happens, but is absolutely not acceptable for the New York Times high standards. Got caught and got fired, and so became in its own little way. I didn't murder anybody, didn't rob any banks, but did become a little bit of an outlaw for a while in the journalism world. And there's a way that some journalists can come off as holier than thou or on their high horse, but I've found that if I just open up and say, listen, I am a very flawed human being. I do not pretend to be perfect. I make many mistakes before breakfast. We were just talking earlier how we both have teenage children. I mean, do you ever like go lay down in bed at night and say, oh, I messed that one up, or I should
Never, no, of course not. Yeah, every day.
I'm an imperfect person, and I've sort of found that by not pretending to be a perfect person, by so almost in a way leaning into my imperfections and past, mistakes, a lot of criminals who are highly intelligent and very interesting, and I really prefer non-violent criminals, having spent time with both. If I can divide all criminals into two realms, the violent and the nonviolent. The nonviolent allow you to have a little more fun with the story. For example, an art thief or a hermit, as opposed to a murderer. But I find that approaching a certain type of person, someone maybe who has committed a crime, with like, "Hey, I too am flawed," really seems to open up a channel of communication that I find compelling. I'm just going to say enriching, but fascinating. And the thing that's great about being a journalist, we can probably stay from now until next week listing the shitty things about being a journalist, but but the great one of the great things is that you get to follow what interests you and your passions. And I'm interested in highly intelligent people that believe that the laws don't apply to them. And like I
Mm.
said, when I was a younger person, maybe I had an inkling of such thoughts.
Yeah, you wrote about that in True Story, like pretty candidly, which I really like. I mean, I honestly, I had read The Art Thief and Stranger in the Woods first, and then recently was like, oh, I got to read this other one first, right? So
Ooh.
like went back, and I normally try to stick to my script here, but I'm gonna go off script for a second here.
Yeah,
That
let's go off script.
yeah. So obviously, you wrote about pretty in depth around like getting like I don't know if like getting caught or whatever the New York Times of that composite character, and your career has gone in such an interesting place, right? Like since then, right, with all these novels and like New York Times bestseller turned into a movie, et cetera. Like I can't imagine you're glad that that happened, but like how do you see your career changing? I guess like because of that.
Just to let your listeners know, and first, a little note here, like everything I'm about to say is true, despite the fact
Yes.
that it seems unbelievable. I mentioned being fired by the New York Times, and what I left out was literally the same day that my firing was made public. I find out again, people, true. Because if I was making something up, I would not make it as ridiculously coincidental as this. I
Just
would at
the
least put
reporter from the Oregonian.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get a call that a dude who is accused of 4 murders and has fled to Mexico. Remember my name, Mike Finkel or Michael Finkel, has been running around Mexico, a murderer who killed his wife and his 3 children, about the most horrific crime you can imagine,
Yeah.
has been running around Mexico telling everyone his name is Michael Finkel and that he is a reporter for the New York Times. I mean, that is ridiculous. And I find out he gets captured in Mexico, gets extradited to the United States, says that the only person he's going to talk to is the real Michael Finkel. I go to the prison. He looks me in the eye, this guy who's quite a attractive man, a little younger than me, the fake Michael Finkel, the murderer Michael Finkel, and says, listen, I've been reading your writing, for years and years. And you're like, I got one fan, Craig. And he turns out to be a psychopathic murderer. But
You have more fans than that, but yeah.
that was my first fan. And he tells me, looks me dead in the eye, and he says, maybe dead in the eye is the wrong expression. He looks me straight in the eye and says, I'm innocent and I'll prove it to you because I know how good a journalist you are, and you'll help me champion my innocence. And that started a long 1 year, 2 year, intense, disturbing, violent criminal interview chain. And not to give away the ending, but he did not prove to me that he was innocent. We'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah, so it was crazy. I picked that book up afterwards and really recently, and I had no idea how it ended. I legit the entire time, like you, was like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, oh, did he do this? Did he not do it? So I was reading it almost as if it was like a thriller. And I don't know, like what was that? Like, what was that like? Like you had to have known earlier than you like I feel like you were almost like wanting to believe his story, because like you guys had struck up a friendship, like what was that like towards the end when I mean, again, I guess I am giving away the ending, but I mean, this book is 20 years old at this point, so people go read it, but like,
And it's not really a who done it. It's more like a why done it. If you ask me, there's, the great surprise in the book is that there is no surprise. Yeah. The only thing I can say to you is that I never want to spend a tremendous amount of time with a truly psychopathic, violent person again, because
mm,
it's, when you think about like a psychopathic murderer, and this is actually a topic I really dislike talking about in a weird way, but I'm willing to do it because maybe we'll move on to other more pleasant subjects. But you always think of like a psychopathic murderer as like has like a swastika engraved in their forehead, like Charles Manson, or looks like Hannibal Lecter or something crazy. But the scariest of all humans are someone that looks absolutely normal, that will make witty jokes in front of you and also could kill their wife and their 3 kids. That is truly frightening. And that's what I experienced. Someone who seemed like if I pumped into this dude at a bar where we would have shot a couple of games of pool and had a great laugh. And I would, come over for dinner. What a fun guy. That's the kind of person that's really frightening. And this is the type of person I hoot, Mike Finkel, and really rattled me to my core. And it's funny when you talk about like of all the work I've ever written, of all the articles, that is the one I am least like if I ever saw someone reading that book, I would run in the other direction. It's kind of like, I'm not ashamed of it, but it is so is like personal and creepy. And like anybody who reads that, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I hope you don't think less of me. I've done some growing up in the last quarter century. Anyway, that's it. I'm not paying you $125 an hour to be my therapist, but that book does bring out the therapist sort of session feeling to me.
Totally. I mean, it'd be weird if it didn't. We will move to more pleasant things shortly, but you do talk about like getting so intertwined in his life and like almost like regretting letting him get so close, even introducing him to, your partner. And how did that experience change the way you approached either Christopher Knight or Stefan Breitweiser? Like later on, did like you become more guarded or self-aware in those conversations after going through that, like, oh, I'm getting too looped into this?
Got fired from your dream job and a murderer takes on your identity. Here's the book of how to behave. So it was such a out there situation. Like I almost felt that I needed to speak to this psychopathic murderer to save my career. And I think you hinted earlier in this conversation, were you almost glad that this happened? And while I don't use that term, I'm thinking, if I'd give back everything for this person's wife and 3 young children to be alive. But if he,
of course, yeah,
had to take on another identity, I'm perversely, like, glad is absolutely the wrong word, but I'm perversely like not displeased that he chose me, because it was like,
right.
so I realized all these, like, I'm sort of indebted to a murderer for helping resurrect my career. And so all these bizarrenesses, rather than running away from them, I was like, I'm just going to examine them. I'm going to dissect them. And the reason why that book makes me feel uncomfortable is that I was, I wasn't, I don't think I handled things all that well. And I just sort of admitted the fact that I have no idea what to do here. And I'm probably doing it wrong. But that was sort of the nature of the book. Like, I was thrown into an absolutely bizarre situation. But how did it, it did, even every big project sort of, you come out the other end, maybe a different writer, I think, after every large project. But I've always been someone who, I think I touched on this earlier, who likes to dive in, get as deep as possible and know someone as richly as possible so that you can portray them as honorably and honestly and accurately as possible on the page. And this was interesting. I got caught lying. I'm dealing with a pathological liar and murderer. How do you find honesty amidst the mountain of lies? And that's the reason why I called the book True Story. I didn't call it like Mike and the Murderer or the dude who killed his family. I called it True Story because that's really the theme, is what really is the truth. And in the end, it's a very slippery thing. And not a great revelation, but here it was, like, right in front of me, how one can manipulate the truth and get and face terrible consequences, ranging from being put on death row to being way less an offense, being fired from your job.
How did you decide what to put in the book and what to maybe ignore, especially while in the midst of your own kind of like redemption arc? Like, I'm sure he said, I think in the book you wrote, he sent you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of things. Like, how did you decide like what was going to make it into the book, especially when, like, you were being so careful at that time?
I think that's funny because I think with all of my book projects, I prefer, I have 3 teenage children. I don't have a ton of, I love to read, but I don't have a ton of free time. And so I like things to be short. I grew up in journalism world where you write a newspaper article, you get the important stuff out, boom, 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 leave the person to turn the page, read the sports section next. So funny, I feel like I would actually like to listen to that question. Like, how do you decide what to put in? I'd like to hear 100 other writers' answers to that.
Seriously,
because I don't think you'll have 2 identical. I actually, think almost the opposite. It's like it's not deciding what I'm going to put in, it's deciding what I'm throwing out.
Yeah.
And which is probably the same exact way to say it. It's just that's the way my head works. The short answer is I don't know. And that is possibly the most
The most
honest.
honest answer. Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I both love and drives me crazy about the act of writing is that it's a lot based on feel. Sometimes imagine myself being the sound man at a concert where all your picture just a board with dials just everywhere. And I'm like, oh, let's turn up the first person. Let's turn up the humor. Let's turn down the metaphor. Let's turn down the descriptive button. Let's not give 3 examples where 1 will suffice. Let's put down the short chapter button. Like lots of things are going on. I I'm just wading through the underbrush, hoping that something strikes. But one of the great non-secrets of writing is that if you read something I've written, like, do not think that that just came from my fingertips to your eyes. There's draft after draft. I have professional editors weighing in. I have what I call my gang of rabbis. I have like 10 readers, not all of whom are Jewish, but many, like me. I have a gang of rabbis, that read it and give me feedback. And so there are lots of drafts, and I want it to sound polished and natural and not too polished at the same time and be true. And I hire fact checkers, especially with the background that I have. And so I think we could talk about this for a long time, but if you think that, I don't know if other writers say this, but I think I really, truly don't quite know what I'm doing, but in the best way possible. Like if I'm in the right headspace, I kind of like figuring it out. And then the next morning I'll read it and be like, oh, Mike, that was terrible. That's not the way to tell that story. Just like me babbling to you right now, I think second and third draft of this conversation will get shorter and more precise and honed. Right now, you're getting the absolute rawness, which also has its own advantages. But in writing, I like my stuff to be a little more honed and multi-drafted, to make up a word.
I love that. I mean, I think that's why it's so great that there's the article, there's the novel, there's the nonfiction, there's the podcast, right? There's a place for all these different types of, overly edited or non-edited or whatever different types of conversations. So I did promise that we would move on from true stories. So to move on to the art thief, when you look at someone like Breitweiser and, the art thief for listeners, and alongside Christopher Knight, the hermit, where Breitweiser was surrounded by priceless objects and the other was living with almost nothing. What surprised you most about how each story kind of like related to one another in the idea of like ownership and possessions? Because they're very similar types of people in certain ways, but like in a completely different spectrum,
Yeah, so I'm just going to recap if you don't mind. So briefly, The Art Thief, my most recent book, is about a guy who stole a Frenchman who stole $2 billion worth of art from a couple of 100 museums around Europe just to hang them in his bedroom for he and his girlfriend to enjoy. So an art thief that stole for aesthetic pleasure. And then the book previous that you mentioned, The Stranger in the Woods, is about a man who lived in the woods of Maine here in northeastern United States, all by himself for 27 years, for more than a quarter century, lived all by himself. So we have an art thief, we've got a hermit. The thing that they have in common are that they fulfill my sort of search criteria, which is I want a story that is both unbelievable and true at the same time. And I believe that they both kind of qualify, where the main character will speak with me. And also, this is not something you've heard already on television news or 6 documentaries. So these are actually hard categories to fulfill: amazing, true, unknown, and the hardest of all really is that the main person will agree to speak with me. With The Art Thief, it took more than 4 years of writing letters, maybe 5 years of writing letters before The Art Thief agreed to meet with me. And even our first meeting, our first lunch, he didn't even let me bring a pen, a notebook, or a
Wow.
recorder. It was just for meeting. And so, so it all, both those, and even the true story book about the murder also fulfilled that sort of criteria of being, unusual people, a story that defies belief, and lucky fortune to be able to tap into the head of the person who committed these crimes. And I'm well aware that they may be lying to me. Of course, everybody wants to make themselves look good.
Yeah, show themselves in the best light or
Yeah. And so all those factors come into play, and I never try and shy away from it or pretend that you're not hearing from people that everybody who speaks in a nonfiction article has biases. And I don't, ever since the very first book, True Story, where I basically say the truth is a slippery thing to grab onto, both the other books have sort of touched on that a little bit. Can you trust what a thief says? Not really. You back it up.
it's kind of
You
their
back it up.
thing. Yeah.
You back it up with police reports. You try and report around it, but also in the end, you just tell the readers everything you know as succinctly as possible. And I never like to I never like to tell the reader what to believe. I feel that my job as a journalist is to lay out the facts as compellingly as possible, and that a good book, and I'm not saying mine are good, it's for people to decide, but a good book is a little bit of a dance between the person who wrote it and the person who's reading it. And I'm not going to tell you what to believe. You decide. You're the jury. You read the book and you tell me, oh my God, that guy's a bastard. He's a nothing but a shoplifter that is, destroying museums. Or man, wow, I've felt so powerfully overwhelmed by beauty before that I totally understand his desire to, take something beautiful, bring it home, touch it, and make love to his girlfriend
and
underneath it.
have it
Like,
on his nightstand. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and neither is wrong. Like, you can like the person, hate the person, and you are neither of those opinions are wrong, and both almost are correct in its weird way. Like everybody, I like to portray difficult people in as nuanced a light as possible. I don't know if I succeed at that, but that's the intention.
I think the intention is working out well. So The Stranger in the Woods is such a quiet book compared to the others, right? There's no big flashy arrest in Mexico, no Rembrandts being lifted off a wall. Like was that story harder to write because there was so much less like visual drama, for maybe lack of a better expression?
Yeah, so no surprise if I do not know what kind of masochist I am, but I decided, oh, I'm going to write a story. I'm going to try and interview someone who literally spoke no words for 27 years, who literally is the most shy, most introverted person. That's the person I would like to interview. What was I thinking? So, uh, but as I sort of touched on earlier, if there's like some sort of journalistic spidey sense or something that happens to me where I'm like, I'm really interested in this, despite me being quite loud and jawing a mile a minute with you. I've spent most of my life in Montana. Now I'm talking to you from Utah. I love being alone and quiet. I know it sounds shocking, in the wilderness, and it fulfills me. And I love, as I mentioned earlier, I love reading books. And here I met a guy who spent 27 years all by himself reading thousands of books. This was like the Michael Jordan of my two obsessions, wilderness and reading. And here was like the grand champion of living in the wilderness and reading. And so I really wanted to tap into his mind. And the more he said, you cannot tap into my mind, the more I was like, oh, now I really want to know.
Now the
Because
challenge is on. Yeah.
well, people who don't want to tell you what they're thinking usually have kind of interesting thoughts, and people who just babble like me, like at the other end of the bar, don't have that much to say. So I was really curious, and he was or is Chris Knight, the hermit, the protagonist of The Stranger in the Woods. I believe he has an amazing head on his shoulders, super intelligent, and did, after much clawing and hoping, say some, I'm just going to say it, moderately profound things. It was like, how would you say it? It was like a love-hate writing that, it was like blood from a stone. Like, how do you write a book about someone who says nothing for 27? Basically, it's like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book about a guy who sat in the woods by himself and said nothing for a quarter century. That's not very much action. But I felt like, in a weird way, that, oh man, maybe seven. I'm glad you're not talking to me in the middle of writing that, because no fewer than 700 times I was like, this is ridiculous, Mike. Just go find a big shoot 'em up, bank robber or something more compelling. So
Yeah.
I'll just say it. I'm kind of proud of the way that book came out. It was a challenge, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, I guess if I read it right now, I'd probably turn beet red and change every paragraph. But it was a I felt like his story was bizarrely, I'm going to say this, bizarrely universal. Yes, I know nobody else is sitting alone for 27 years, breaking into other houses for food, clothing, reading supplies, flashlights, radios, all those things. But it weirdly touched on some things that I felt that were almost universal. Like, are we getting to know ourselves in this world of utter distractions? And like the only person you can really know in the world is yourself. Everybody else, you can only sort of know, but you could really know yourself, and we're all afraid to do it, myself included. And I thought he really touched on some profound things.
I mean, I think that's the thread throughout all of your books, right? They're all people that maybe you don't want to be, right? I don't want to be a murderer. I don't want to be a thief, but like they all did things that you could understand, right? Longo was stealing and doing crime because he was trying to take care of his family in a lot of senses, right? Like Stefan loved art and wanted to be closer to it, like so on and so on. Like none of these people are just immediately 100% bad, you know?
I was going to say to you, I appreciate that reading, and in my own mind, God, I really almost never speak about this process, but uh, the book about the murderer, as I touched on before, wasn't really a book about a murderer. It was like, wow, why do we lie? Where is the truth? Like, if 10 people are on a block and there's a car crash and ask everyone to write it down, honestly, they'll all have a different version. No one's trying to lie. So
Yeah.
that one, the book about the hermit, yeah, it's a story about a hermit, but really is like, do we know each other enough? Do we spend like, is alone time good? Like, why is it the most, besides the death penalty, solitary confinement is the most harshest punishment in the United States, but yet there's people like Jesus, Muhammad, the Buddha that spend time alone. Like, is spending time alone good, bad, punishment, enlightenment? So that was that. The art thief. Why do we find things beautiful? Why do we swoon before whatever it is that makes you beautiful? The artwork on my walls, a sunset. Like, what makes us feel
Mm.
what aesthetics? Weird. And so there's both the subject of the book and then the actual action in my mind. There's sort of like I look for that as well. Like a magazine article could be about anything, but a book has to have some, as I like to say to myself, I take these stabs at profundity and miss, but at least I'm taking a shot at it. I'm like,
I love
come join me and
that.
let's try and be a little profound while we're also being jokey and enjoying a beer, because life cannot be too serious. But let's take a stab at profundity, and I'll lunge at it and just miss. And that's what I feel like my books are: lunging at profundity, being profound, but not quite getting it. But it's like the come along with me for the big lunge at something deep, and we'll almost touch it with our fingertips and then fall back to earth. And I think that's the nature.
I like that you say that some of them are misses, even though they've been like turned into Hollywood movies and New York Times bestsellers. I think they're hitting the mark, Like, give yourself
Thank
some
you.
credit here.
I mean, the way I think about it is that other books miss more.
Yeah, there you go.
Profoundness is too much of a, I'm just going to leap at it. Please don't let me have to grab it. That's too much pressure on me.
So before I let you go, I know we're running a little bit against the time here. I always end each episode with asking for one good thing. And it doesn't have to be like a book recommendation. It can literally be anything in your life that's bringing you joy that you think that the rest of us should give a try.
I mean, brings me insane joy. And remember, I'm speaking to you from Park City, Utah, is skiing. I
Mm.
love skiing. I am a spoiled brat. I live right near a ski hill.
I mean,
I
you've
go
written a ton
skiing.
about skiing too.
I'm not very good at it. I don't really care. I go skiing like everyone be jealous, 6 days a week for at least an hour.
Wow.
I actually just went to the gym today, did not go, but I've been in the last 5 and I'm going the next 4, even though we're having a terrible winter. There is something ridiculous about putting long things on your feet, long things in your hand, going out into the Rocky Mountains in the middle of winter in the cold and sliding down a hill every run to like the reason why I do not like Disney World, and I have 3 kids and I've been, is that it's too safe. Like, you can fly into a tree. I can every single run. If I have to just decide how much risk to take, and I can hit a tree. It's not like you can drive Space Mountain off the track. And so I love that risk and that sense of speed. And there is something about a ski day that I've convinced myself, and please don't you dare try and talk me out of it. There's something about a ski day that when I get back, I feel more creative and can write better. And so 5 hours of work and 2 hours of skiing, I get way more done.
Living the dream there.
And so it just suits my soul. And in the summer, I love to mountain bike almost as much. So similar things, getting out there by myself, exercising in a way where, skiing and mountain biking are both, I don't have to think too deeply about the actual mechanics. And so my head wanders in its own weird way. And without those two sports, I feel like I would be a lesser person. And so that's what I love to do. If you haven't been skiing, come to Park City. I can teach you in about 3 hours the basics. It's not a week of it. Yeah, it's ridiculously expensive, but
is this your backup plan after writing? Is you're gonna be a ski instructor?
Oh my God, the only worse paying job than writing. No, I don't. For the last 40 years, I've had no backup plan, which gets my butt up and slight panic, 3 children, bills to pay, so yeah, it's just the slight panic of the expensive life of America that gets me going. And it is compliments like you have showered down on me that keeps me continuing on. So I also want to thank you as well.
Oh, thank you. So The Art Thief was a huge success, even though you seem like you don't want to admit it. Named it Best Book of the Year, The Washington Post, New Yorker, and by anyone that would listen to me. I told everyone I knew that they need to pick this book up. It's now been a couple of years since its publication, so what can we expect from you next?
I'm working on a story right now. Again, there's the main topic and something else. So it's in the psychedelic drug space, which is sort of interesting. Psychedelic drugs, LSD, psilocybin, things like that. In the 50s, when they were first sort of popularized, were like thought to be this amazing therapeutic breakthrough, basically a miracle drug, LSD. You could buy, it was legal until 67, I believe. And then hippies got a hold of it. And I'm a little bit of a hippie myself, so I say that with love. And it became Schedule 1 and absolutely criminalized. And now we've almost come full circle, where in places like Colorado and other places, there is now psilocybin therapy, and it's coming around. And so I met a person who sort of like a real life Breaking Bad, someone who worked for the State Department, was a Harvard educated, and yet cooked almost all the acid in the United States for like 20 or 30 years.
Of course you met this person. Why not?
Also spent many years in maximum security prison and has been released. And so it's a really fascinating story. And do not hold your breath. It takes me years to write something, but my mind is clear, but also full of LSD, theoretically, not actually. I don't think I would be able to have a conversation with you if I was actually on any quantity, microdose or macrodosing LSD. I'm on the gym. That's what I got. I'm on push-ups is what I really is feeling at this moment.
Well, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it.
I can't wait to have written it. So thanks.
Yes. Well, hopefully when it's out, we can talk again. But thank you so much for your time today. This has been so nice to meet you.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for your great sense of humor and joie de vivre.
Thanks for listening to that episode, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't read Michael yet, please go buy all of his books at your local bookstore or borrow them from your library as soon as you can. In 2 weeks, I will be releasing the next episode with one of my favorite authors in horror, Eric LaRocca. He has a new book coming out named Wretch that releases on March 24th, so that episode will release right around then. We, of course, talk about his new novel, but we dive into a lot of other topics like queerness and horror, how he continues to keep pushing boundaries in his writing, and why titles and cover art are so important to his process and the publishing industry in general. Speaking of horror authors, I wanted to recommend a book that I just finished called The Return by Rachel Harrison. It came out in 2020, so this one's a little bit older. So if you do want to pick this one up, I bet you can get it on Libby without a wait since it's a little bit older. I love Rachel Harrison. Everything she does is really fun. This book is about a group of women, and one of their friends goes out on a hike and does not return for 2 years. They have like a mock funeral for her. Like they think she's dead. And then after 2 years, she returns, but she's very different in a lot of ways. And she does not remember where she was for the last 2 years. I won't give any spoilers, but they all go on a vacation together to kind of celebrate her return and reconnect, and chaos ensues. So if you're into a spooky, scary, but kind of fun and ridiculous sort of story, this one's a really great pickup. So I would recommend that. So keep an eye out for the next episode with Eric LaRocca, and thanks for listening.